Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Just in an effort to make things simpler and easy for our webinar participants, we're offering two audio options. You can either dial in and listen over the phone, or you are also able to just listen through your computer if you have speakers. So it makes it a little bit difficult if you do have a question. So if you have a question, you can either raise your hand and we can unmute you if you have the ability to either have a microphone on your computer if you're on the phone, or you are also able to type your question right into the questions log box. And we'll try to get to questions as we go along, but anything at the end, we'll have a short question and answer period at the end as well. So again, thank you for joining us today. This is a webinar from the Research and Action series. It's entitled Mentoring, a Promising Intervention for Children of Prisoners. And I am Katie Timmer, and I am in AmeriCorps Vista, serving here with Mentor Michigan. And facilitating today's webinar is going to be Michelle Susi, who is a mentor training consultant. Michelle, do you want to go ahead and give that quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I have worked with mentoring programs for 14 years, particularly with Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I have over 5 years working specifically with the Children of Prisoners programs. And I've worked in rural and urban agencies in a variety of sizes. So I've been in a two-man shop, and I've also been in having a place where I've had 16 program staff to work with. So I've had the experiences of varieties that you may also be in those types of agencies as well. And what I wanted to share is working with this population of youth has been one of the most rewarding and challenging experiences for me in my career. And as we go along, I'll share stories in a couple places, but we'll be happy to share more at the end. So make sure you keep track of your questions as we go, and we'll be happy to cover those at the very end and help you out. So let's do an overview of the Research and Action series. It was designed by Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. The series is designed to share the latest research with mentoring professionals and provide tangible strategies that can be implemented within programs. And the series can help programs make decisions based on current research that's linked with positive outcomes. There are actually 10 issues in the series, and each issue provides research at the beginning of it, which is peer-reviewed article written by a leading scholar summarizing the latest research available on the topic and its implications for the field. And we're going to talk about the research area for this particular topic. Action, which is tools, activities, templates, and resources created by Mentor with concrete suggestions on putting theory into practice. And this is also the section of this webinar where I'll be able to share some more stories and put some of that action into place for you. And then at the end of each action series, there is a resource guide, a list of additional resources for further research. And this is great information if you want to explore this in more depth. So here you can see the 10 issues that are covered in the series. Mentor Michigan plans to host webinars to share each of these series within the field. And today's webinar is specifically going to address issue 10 from the Research and Action series, Mentoring, a Promising Intervention for Children of Prisoners. So you can download the issue from the website above. All 10 issues are available from that link. If you haven't already, you can download issue 10. The research section of this issue was written by Shay Bilchik of Georgetown University. And first we're going to discuss the research, then we'll describe the action. So before we begin with the research, I'd like to ask a couple questions of the group regarding your experiences with Children of Prisoners mentoring programs. So the next screen, we're going to give you a poll. So in your own experience with Children of Prisoners mentoring programs, how many years experience do you personally have? Less than a year, 1 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years, or 7 or more years? And if you could select the one that fits for you, that would be great.
Okay, we had 100% of people vote, and I'll share the results now.
Okay, so we've got most of you have less than 1 year, and a few have 1 to 3 years, but we have nobody that has 4 or more years. Okay, so knowing that that's your own experience, we have another poll for you. And we want to know what your organization's experience is with Children of Prisoners mentoring programs. So does your organization have less than 1 year experience, 1 to 3 years experience, 4 to 6 years experience, 7 or more years of experience? Are you really unsure?
We've got 80% have voted, and here are the results.
Okay, so 7 or more years, that's great. A lot of you have, even though you might have less experience, you have a really rich organization to rely on, and then 75% of you are unsure. Okay, great. Just to let you know, some programs may have, over the years, just been serving youth and not necessarily identified which youth qualify for this program over the year. I think with the federal funding that came out and a program that Mentor was running called Caregiver's Choice for a while, our programs were more likely to identify more of these kids over that time. So there may be a couple experiences that your program may have had with 1 or 2 mentoring relationships, and some obviously you know that you have more depth there. So great. I hope you get something new to take back to your organization, or at least something new for you to feel like you have a better basis after today's webinar. And again, don't hesitate to ask questions at the end. So I want to talk a little bit about the research. Incarceration rates have increased significantly over the past 20 years. As these rates have increased, there was a call for more punishment and accountability for crime. Policies were created that resulted in increased numbers of nonviolent offenders being sent to jail, and this has created the collateral damage. This damage is to the children of those offenders who have been negatively impacted by the incarceration of their parents. These children and their families have been described as the most at-risk subculture in the United States. To better understand children of prisoners, it's necessary to understand the scope of this problem. The life circumstances facing the children and their parents at the time of incarceration, the impact of incarceration on the children from a developmental perspective, and the potential benefit different types of interventions may provide. First, consider that there are more than 2 million children and youth with an incarcerated parent. This represents a dramatic increase as illustrated in the second bullet point. Of these youth, the most vulnerable population is the 8 to 10% whose mother is incarcerated. Young people impacted by parental incarceration already face several risk factors in their lives and tend to experience life circumstances that include poverty, instability, so a lot of moving around from schools and also from homes, and reduced access to sources of support. Again, note, these youth are already growing up in challenging situations, and the parental incarceration adds just another risk factor layer. The living situations of these youth vary greatly. Many lived with non-parental caregivers before their parents were incarcerated, like grandmothers or aunts or uncles. Only half of these children lived with their incarcerated parent prior to the incarceration. Mothers are much more likely to have lived with the children prior to incarceration than fathers. When a parent goes to prison, the other parent, grandparents, and other relatives are likely to provide care to the child with relatively low levels of these youth moving to the foster care system. Children are more likely to move to foster care if a mother goes to prison than if a father goes to prison. This is because mothers are often providing care prior to incarceration, and fathers are less likely to move into this role. And I just want to share briefly an example of that. As I've been out recruiting youth for the program, as we've gone to the female prisons, we get good leads, good referrals. They know where their children are. They know who's taking care of their children. As we've done outreach for identifying children who have incarcerated parents in the male prisons. We rarely get decent leads from that. Sometimes we get the lead and that's not where the child is living, or the mother doesn't want to have anything to do with knowing that the father has made that referral. The other situation that comes up is many of the males will come and say, can you help me find where my children are? And not out of any ill intent. They just actually want to reconnect with the family because of their new experience of being incarcerated. So that is true to the dynamics of reaching out to children and the inmates. We can move to the next slide. Thanks, Katie. The length of incarceration affects the children's experiences as well. Fathers serve an average of 80 months in state prison and 103 months in federal prison. And when you compare this to mothers who average 49 months in state prison and 66 months in federal prisons, this difference is due in part to the increased rate of violent crimes by the father. Adding to the scope of this problem, 23% of incarcerated mothers enter prison with a diagnosed mental illness, compared to 13% of the fathers. Mothers are more likely to report a serious history involving drug use, poverty, a history of physical or sexual abuse. Incarcerated parents have increased rates of chronic health problems, 5 to 10 times more than the general population. Now we'll consider how this situation can impact child and youth development. Incarceration is a process, and there's multiple stages that can impact a young person. Consider that 1 out of every 5 young people witness their mother's arrest, and more than half of these children are 7 years old or younger at the time. Now remember the situations we talked about that mothers are living in or coming from, and you have children this young that are coming out of those same home dynamics. These children report nightmares and flashbacks often, and other children may be at school at the time of their arrest and come home to an empty house and confusion. And many children are told nothing about the arrest or incarceration, and this is often called the conspiracy of silence. Programs really need to consider how these experiences impact child development and how mentoring programs should be designed. Some argue that children need honest information about the incarceration so that they can better understand and start the grieving and coping process, while others point out that full disclosure of incarceration can have an impact on family jobs, child custody, and housing, and this can motivate some to force silence regarding the situation to protect the family. The separation caused when a parent is incarcerated can be traumatic at any age, but the consequences are even more severe when an infant or young child is taken from a mother. This has an impact on attachment. When a child has insecure attachments, they're more likely to suffer from emotional and behavior problems. In the longer term, the attachment issues often lead to poor peer relationships and decreased cognitive abilities. These children do not learn how to get and maintain attention from a caregiver and thus do not get their needs met. It is estimated that 70% of young children with incarcerated mothers have emotional or psychological problems like anxiety, withdrawal, depression, shame, and even guilt. These youth can show signs of anger, aggression, and hostility. School-age children who are moved to a new home in a different school district when a parent is incarcerated can cause instability and prevent young people from forming important connections with the school and peers. Adolescents are at a developmental stage where they must learn how to be an individual yet connected with others. Having an incarcerated parent disrupts this process and may lead to a rejection of boundaries set by adults. Adolescents who have a mother in prison are more likely to engage in delinquent behavior and drop out of school. Those who receive support and have strong connections to school, peers, and family are less likely to display these behaviors. Mentoring has been found to improve attitudes towards school, reduce absences, decrease aggressive behaviors, decrease substance abuse, improve relationships with family and other adults, and increase chances of going to college. The significance of the outcomes increase as the duration of the relationship increases. Let me say that again. The significance of the outcomes increase as the duration of the relationship increases. When mentoring programs are successfully implemented for these children, we find that children increase social and emotional skills, are more able to form attachments, form stronger relationships, and experience better social and educational outcomes. Mentors can help children understand and choose a life direction that's different than that of the incarcerated parent. These youth need, above everything else, lasting connections with others. Jean Rhodes, who's a leading mentoring researcher, has found that matches that end early can cause harm to young people. This is particularly true for children of incarcerated parents who often lack other significant relationships. When relationships end prematurely, youth have exhibited decreased self-worth, lower academic confidence, increased absences, and decreased involvement in pro-social activities. Programs working with this population need to provide significant support and resources to foster long-term mentoring matches. Note that matches under 6 months have no impact and often negative impact as previously stated. High-quality matches making it to 1 year have shown the significant outcomes we're looking for. Social supports for children and a sense of hopefulness are protective factors against the development of both internalizing and externalizing problems, regardless of the number of stressful life events a child may have experienced. Mentoring can be a positive intervention as it provides a developmental resource and support for children who have experienced the negative developmental impact of parent-child separation and associated trauma. Mentoring offers both opportunities and risks for this population. The opportunity is to provide a much-needed greater sense of hope, along with a supportive individual in the child's life. The risk is the damage that can be done to an already fragile set of life circumstances through mentoring that doesn't meet the higher quality demanded for this population. Mentoring programs and professionals that work with children of prisoners need to learn how to support mentors and help them understand how to deal with the issues that arise when working with this population. This might include requests to visit a parent in prison and assisting the child during the reentry period. It's important that mentors have both the interest and skills needed to work with this population. They should be non-judgmental, able to self-regulate, and have the ability to set and maintain boundaries. These mentors need to find ways to support the child's relationship with family and have a willingness to understand the family circumstances. High-quality programs have a strong selection process for youth and mentors to ensure that good matches are made. Lower functioning youth may need more significant intervention and may not be appropriate for mentoring. Connecting the youth and caregiver to other community resources before matching or during match may be critical to meeting their needs. I want to share a personal story. I did a parent-child interview, and upon interviewing the family, identified that there were a host of other basic needs the family needed. In addition, the parent had shared that the youth had just begun counseling and had only had 2 sessions at the time that I was interviewing them. Most mentors can't take all of that on. That's a lot to ask them to take on, as well as establishing a relationship with a child who has an incarcerated parent. I shared some additional resources with the parent and encouraged the continued counseling, and shared with the parent that I would want to postpone matching her child until they had been in counseling a little bit longer. I decided after going back to the office and I reconnected with the parent to let her know that I would reassess this in about 6 months. I reached out to the counselor at 6 months and felt that the situation was improved. They had continued counseling. When I spoke with the parent, I had found out that she had reached out to a couple of the other resources that I had provided. Note, this isn't typical for all families to have been, by 6 months, having connected with all of this. But again, at this point, I was assured that, you know, other resources had been wrapped around this family, the counseling had continued, and I was ready to put that particular mentee into the ready to be matched and consider them for a match. I do want to share with you, sometimes when families reach out for resources, they don't always have the best of luck of making those connections. So depending on how concerned you may be about that family's success, you may want to follow up with them sooner. I've also had families who have started counseling and stopped counseling, and oftentimes that's because they're not aware that there are other options for them, that there are other services in their area that offer the same counseling services. As we know, every program staff person in the mentoring world is not the same as the next program staff person. Counselors are all very different as well, and sometimes our families who are reaching out for their services don't realize they have options. If they don't like the methods or the personality of that counselor, it's nice to let them know that there are oftentimes other counselors within that program they're in, or if they're going to Catholic services, that there are also Lutheran services possibly in their area, or other counseling services that they could also seek out that would have a sliding scale system for them. So programs need to also have supports in place to help the children whose match ends early or poorly. And these youth tend to be less resilient and more easily harmed by early termination. Programs should do their best to provide a healthy relationship transition. Most of these youth have not experienced healthy transitions in relationships. And remember again that matches under 6 months have no impact or negative impact for these youth. So it's really important to consider your closure process with them. So now we're going to move on to the action portion of the issue. And the action section provides programs with tools, activities, templates, or resources created by mentor with concrete suggestions on putting the theory and research into practice. In this action session, we will demonstrate how developmental impacts of having a parent in prison can affect the mentoring relationship, offer strategies to counter these impacts, provide general strategies for working with children of prisoners. The figure demonstrates the relationship among various components involved in a successful mentoring for children of prisoners using a developmental model. I'm going to give you a moment to look at that. So reading the diagram from left to right, the age of the child when the parent is arrested results in specific developmental impacts. And these developmental impacts have implications for any mentoring relationship for that child. However, there are strategies that mentoring programs and mentors can use to reach the ultimate goal. Improved, longer-lasting relationships as indicated in the box on the far right. So while children of prisoners may share some similar characteristics and face similar challenges, it's important to remember that all children are unique. The arrest and incarceration of a parent is traumatic, and these experiences change the developmental path of a young person. Incarceration involves a series of events that can each have a unique impact on the prisoner's child and family. These stages include arrest, pretrial detention, imprisonment, and release. The conspiracy of silence and economic issues, among other complicating factors, can further disrupt development. The presence of social supports and a sense of hopefulness have been found to mediate the impacts that parental incarceration can have on a child's development. I want to talk about how each child can seriously be unique. I reviewed, at the time I was working in my smaller agency where it was myself, and I had an individual who part-time would interview our youth and sometimes our mentors. She brought me the file of this particular mentee, a female mentee, and I'll tell you a little bit of the background of this particular child. She had an incarcerated father, and her mother had passed away. She moved to live with her aunt and uncle, and while she lived in their home, a couple pets had passed away, as well as a cousin of hers had died, a teenage cousin had died in a car accident. And at this point, unfortunately, the aunt and uncle felt like they could no longer take care of this child, and she was moved into a foster care family. That's a lot to think about. This little girl was actually only 9 years old and had already gone through all of these experiences with incarceration and death and moving from home to home. And I only can imagine that she was also having a change in schools as she was doing this. I couldn't imagine what we were going to be working with. I had a chance to meet this young girl after she had been matched with her mentor for about a month. And I met this young girl and could not have, I had to go back and read the file because it did not, what I had read and what I had met, fortunately, were two different worlds. She was a smiling, happy, what appeared to be sociable child who came to me to tell me how she was going to be doing a sewing project with her mentor. They were going to sew the letters of her name and make one pillow for each of that, how they had been reading and doing crafts together. So when we talk about how unique children are, this is a great example of even what one of your peers may bring back in the file or the history that you may hear that these children have been through. Mentors in their life really can make a difference for them and make some things come together so that they can have some experiences that other kids their ages are having. So let's move on to the developmental impacts of parental incarceration by age of a child at arrest. Don't worry, I'm going to be talking about this slide for a little bit here. There's a lot to take in on this particular one. This is some great information to share with mentors, and I highly recommend that once you match a mentee and a mentor is that you deliver it in a customized way to the mentor. It can also give you ways to identify particular areas that you may want to support the match. And again, each child is unique, so there may be some of this that relates to that particular child or may come up as the relationship evolves. And honestly, I can think of a match situation that fits every single one of these examples of a developmental impact on a child, but I'll only share a couple today. So let's start when a child is 0 to 2 years of age. They are at the trust and attachment stage of development. And research suggests that the quality and impact of mentoring relationships is based on the closeness of the bond between the mentor and mentee. For mentees with trust and attachment challenges, developing that bond may be difficult. At 2 to 6 years of age, the children may experience separation anxiety, and mentees with separation anxiety may have difficulty establishing appropriate boundaries in relationships. This could manifest itself as being overly needy or attached, the mentee who hugs everyone when they first meet them, or conversely by remaining detached and distant to prevent future disappointment. And these would be your mentees who don't say boo for meeting after meeting with their mentor. At 7 to 10 years of age, mentees may show poor self-concept and developmental regressions. Mentees with low self-esteem may not believe that they're worthy of good things, including their mentors. This belief may cause them to act out or hold back emotionally, and it may also result in behavior that is not age appropriate. Mentors who are not prepared may find it difficult to connect to these mentees, prohibiting the development of a close relationship. I had a situation with a male mentee. It was in the beginning stages where we were just getting ready to make the actual match. and the mentor had accepted the mentee. His father had been incarcerated, and we were talking with the parent, and then we were talking with the mentee himself to tell him a little bit of basic information about the mentor and why we thought that that would be a good fit. I'll never, ever forget this statement by the male mentee. He said, maybe someone else might need this mentor more than me, and I'm okay if you don't match me. That just resonated with me for years. We did match that. We still match that child with the male mentor. But that, when I read this stage of development, I think really hit me as that really is what he was experiencing at that time. He felt like someone else, he wasn't worthy of being matched. So he was accepting of being in the program. When it came his time and his turn, he really was thinking that someone else deserved that mentor more than he did. They went on to be a great match, by the way, just so you know. So then we look at children who are 11 to 14 at the time of the parent's incarceration, and they often reject limits on behavior. These mentees may have difficulty working with others and controlling emotions, which can make forming a close relationship difficult. In community-based mentoring especially, mentors may feel uncomfortable with a mentee who has trouble respecting boundaries. I have another match where I did receive a call over the weekend where the mentee had actually acted out. It was about time for him to go home. It was the end of the match meeting, and he got a little aggressive with his mentor, and he actually ended up biting his mentor in his arm, and he was a 12-year-old. So we're way past the toddler stage of wanting to bite. Received the call. As we talked about the situation and what, we de-escalated the situation, and as we talked through it afterwards, what we discovered was this mentee was actually not wanting to leave his mentor. He really enjoyed the time that he spent with him and had a challenge controlling those emotions or expressing them in a proper way at the end of the match meeting. So we talked about some ways to talk about the next meeting that they would get together, when they might next talk to each other on the phone. And for a while, the mentor actually would call the mentee about a half hour to 45 minutes after he had dropped them off so that they could talk about what they had just done and also talk about when they would next see each other. So that was really important for that match. At 15 to 18 years of age, the youth will display signs of premature termination of the dependent relationship with the parent. Mentees may have difficulty trusting and engaging in relationships with adults, which could lead to rejection of the mentor or behavior that challenges the mentor's role to provide guidance and support. Now, this is a funny story that I'm going to share with you. We had a 16-year-old match with a male mentor who was in their late 30s, and this particular male mentor had no kids. Fun guy to be with, and you could tell that just from initially meeting him. His mentee actually asked him if they could double date. Obviously, the mentor had no idea where to go with this and called the program staff to ask for support and find out how he might be able to handle this without discouraging the mentee from wanting to spend time with just the mentor. So, funny story, great story. We did get them through that relationship, through that part of the relationship, and went back to explain to the mentee what the program was about and made sure that he understood the boundaries and that his mentor would not be double dating with him. So, so let's talk a little bit more about what else your program can do. There are some important steps programs can take to improving mentoring relationships when working with children of incarcerated parents. First, to ensure safety and quality programming, you should utilize the Michigan Quality Program Standards for Youth Mentoring as a programming guide. You can find these on the mentormichigan.org website. Second, establish clear expectations with mentors, mentees, families or caregivers, and incarcerated parents about these items. Commitment. How long will the mentor-mentee relationship last? Meetings. What are the expected frequency and duration of contacts and meetings for mentor-mentee pairs? The relationship. What does a typical relationship look like? This is where you can share examples or scenarios based on what other actual matches do in the program. That goes the same for the meetings as well. Outcomes. What are the realistic results that mentors can expect to see? This is really, really important to establish this for the mentor and the parent. And also talk about mentees' knowledge of incarceration, the conspiracy of silence. What is the stance on your program? Do you have program policies that speak to this? Something for your program to consider. Mentors are more successful when they're aware of the family situation. And if the mentor knows of the parental incarceration and the mentee does not, think about what impact this would have on the mentoring relationship if a year from now or 2 years from now the mentee found out that the mentor knew all along. Where does the trust go from there in a relationship? Those are really important things to think about in your program. Programs can increase the effectiveness of mentoring if they involve all the key stakeholders as appropriate in the success of the match, including the families and caregivers, by respecting match preferences, provide additional resources, and I talked about that in one of the previous stories I shared, or host activities or support groups for them. For incarcerated parents, engage the parents from the outset, keep them informed about the relationship, and develop plans to continue the match after their release from prison. And I'll have a story a little bit later about that similar situation. Particularly if the referral came from the inmate, it's really important to communicate back to them. And programs should consider expanding the screening process to address issues specific to serving children of prisoners. When screening mentors determine their skills and comfort level with various characteristics of children of prisoners, as well as how they deal with challenging situations. And that's really important to ask about situations or experiences that they may have to determine whether they're tolerable mentors and not just, yes, I can handle that situation mentors. When screening mentees, get to know each child. If possible, find out the age of the child when the parent was incarcerated and any developmental challenges that he or she may face. You may need to get that from the parent or the caregiver specifically. A comprehensive mentee training can help prepare a youth for the mentoring relationship as well. Programs can prepare mentees to actively participate in a mentoring relationship by addressing important topics. Communication skills, teach mentees how to express thoughts and emotions in a productive way and how to communicate effectively with mentors. Building relationships, ask mentees what they can do to make their relationships last, including concepts such as honesty, respect, that's really important, trust, and consistency. Boundaries, establish clear guidelines for what is and what is not acceptable within the mentoring relationship. I don't think I ever would have said double dating isn't something you can do, but it comes up as you get experiences under your belt. And lastly, using their mentor. Prepare mentees to take advantage of the opportunities, networks, and resources of their mentor by asking for help and assistance. Programs need to create comprehensive, initial, and ongoing mentor training. Again, ongoing mentor training is as important as initial training. Using external partners where appropriate, provide mentors with information on the following. Children of prisoners, discuss the needs, the challenges, the strengths, and assets of this population. A lot of the information that we talked about today could definitely be incorporated into that part. Environmental factors. Describe the environment in which these children and their families live. These include the likelihood that the mentee will change residences and caretakers during the mentoring relationship, as well as impact on the child of the conspiracy of silence, the stigma and shame of the arrest and incarceration of their parents, and the economic complications of incarceration. Developmental stages of youth. Explain the physical, social, and emotional characteristics typical of youth during various stages of development. Ann Adolescents, who is, I'll give you a website, fcnetwork.org. She has a great amount of resources and has done a lot of research and writing around these particular areas and also how they intertwine with each other. So not just the information that we shared previously, but also how that grows with these youth as they age in our program. Talk about building relationships. Ask mentors what they can do to make their relationship last. Include concepts such as honesty, respect, trust, and consistency when you speak with them. And communication skills. Teach them how to communicate effectively with mentees through active listening and other techniques. Values and beliefs. Encourage mentors to examine their values and to respect those of others. So there's going to be the incarcerated parent and the caregiver that they're going to have to understand their values as well as their own and how those interplay with each other. Boundaries. Establish clear guidelines for what is and what is not acceptable. And this is particularly pertinent in relation to the possible desire of a mentee for the mentor to serve as an intermediary in their relationship with their incarcerated parent. So what I mean by that is somebody who might take them for visits or help them write letters. And lastly, support from your program staff. It's so important in your mentor training to let them know that you're there not only to introduce them in the beginning of the relationship, but to help them through the dynamics of the relationship as it continues, and that's so important because there will be ups and downs and situations that will come into play as the relationship continues. So let's talk about additional training and resources specific to working with children or prisoners. Strongly encourage families and caregivers to tell the child the truth about the incarcerated parent. Educate adults and help them understand that premature termination can be especially devastating to children of prisoners. A process that respects the needs and feelings of these youth is essential. Do your best to let them know you need a year commitment. Develop a process that allows the match to continue and thrive after the release and reentry of a parent. I want to share an example with you of a match that I worked through a reentry situation. It was a male mentor and male mentee that mom had contacted the organization to be matched, and the match had been matched 2 years. During this time, the family had moved 4 times. The child had moved from one school to the next, and particularly moved to the new school because of additional supports and needs that he had. During the time where the father, I would say about a month before the father was released, mom decided to move yet a 5th time. And when she made this move, she had just enough money to make the move. And when she relocated, she did not have a refrigerator. So the mentor was helping with this situation. The father was released. The mother had lost her job as well in this right after she made this move, and they had 1 car. After the father got released, he was in the car with the money, the cash they were planning on buying a refrigerator with, and for the next month's rent, and he got stopped for a traffic violation, of which he went to county jail for. Okay, so there goes the cash for the refrigerator, there goes the car to get mama back to work, there goes the car for mom to get the mentee back and forth to school, and father is back in jail. So this becomes a very challenging situation. Meanwhile, the mentor holds in, he's consistent with the mentee, he continues to meet with him on a regular basis, and is actually giving us most of the updates of what's happening in the family. We did talk to mother a couple times throughout this situation. Got the kid back in school, and we found them a resource to get a refrigerator to get them through the interim, a small one nonetheless, but something to get them through. The father came back out of county jail and had resolved everything on that end and was home. And all of a sudden, we could not get in contact with the mother. The father would let the phone go to voicemail, and the mother was not calling us back, which was unlike the past 2 years. She called us back on a regular basis, and we would do our support and supervision as we needed. Finally, we got a hold of, we called at one point and we got a hold of the kid. And he talked to us really briefly on the phone, and he said, my father said I don't need a mentor anymore, so I won't be in the program anymore. I have to go, goodbye. It was a very sad moment. This mentor was phenomenal with the family, phenomenal with the relationship. This is actually the same relationship where the mentee had bit his mentor. And so here we are about 2.5 years later, and we're closing the relationship. And I think that our program flaw with this particular relationship was we did not take enough time to connect with the father and inform him of the program, and we didn't know to ask the mother when would Dad be back so that we could make that transition smoother. So lesson learned, it's good to know that information or know how the family is going to handle the reentry. Not all families go through the same dynamics that this particular family went, but it's very important, I think, to find out about that and keep that in mind with your program and have a process of how you might, in the front end, involve that parent if they're going to come back into the family dynamics like that, because this is an example. Thankfully, the match had been together long enough to have some positive impact, but unfortunately, it closed without really a good closure for the mentor, and I'm sure the mentee was feeling the same way, that he didn't really have closure of this particular relationship. And he also, I think, was feeling some conflicting loyalties between his father and his mentor. So the other piece that's really important, particularly with working with these families and these youth, is to provide regular supervision and support to identify any challenges that the match might be facing. And mentors really need this too. Offer encouragement and assist with the problem solving and generating of new activities. And recognize mentors for that patience that they'll have and the willingness to hang in there when things are tough, as well as for their successes when they do things that go well. They might give you great ideas of which you could share then with other matches in your program. So what can mentors do to improve their relationships with mentees? Be consistent, patient, and flexible. Have the realistic expectations about the challenges or obstacles mentees may face in building a relationship, as well as the potential outcomes that will result. Hold mentees accountable. Establish expectations that are high but achievable, and express confidence in the mentee's ability to achieve them. Understand how to set boundaries with their mentee, and at times with the caregiver and parent. This will help them not be overwhelmed by the family's needs. Ask for help and support from the program staff and other mentors when feeling overwhelmed or unsure. And honor their commitment to the child and the relationship. I have a couple other stories to share, but I want to first, before I might share another example of a match scenario, is to open up for questions at this time.
We have one hand raised. Let me go ahead and unmute you. Sharnita, can you hear us? And can you talk? If not, can you please type in your question in the question log box? It should be on the right-hand side of your screen. It might have got collapsed, so press that little orange arrow back out, and you should be able to type it in. Gloria also has a question. Gloria, do you have a microphone in your computer by chance?
Yes. Wait a minute.
Hi, Gloria.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. My question is it possible I can be emailed a copy of this presentation?
We can post this presentation. We try to post presentations through our SlideShare account, so that's easier for everyone to get it. I will put the website into the question log box right now.
Say what?
I'm going to put the website to be able to find the slides in the question log box here just in a second. And also, we did record today's session, so if you're interested, you'll also get a link to the recording and a follow-up email you'll get tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a great presentation, and I'm looking forward to even learning, go over it again, and just so I can make sure that we share with those who become part of our team to, it's great information.
Great. You'll find more when you download the Research in Action. You'll find additional resources as well in the very back of that, and I really highly encourage you to go look at that. Some of it is very digestible. It's not a book that you have to read. And I would say the Research in Action book is fairly quick read too. You could probably get through it in about a half hour, and then some of the other resources you can look at in about 10 to 15 minutes, and you'll know whether it's something you want to dig deeper into.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see anything else coming in, Michelle, and we still have a few minutes.
Okay, well, let me share just a couple other pieces, and if people would like to put, or we get our other question sent in, we can definitely stay on and tackle that. A lot of challenging situations that you might come up with working, and actually a lot of these scenarios that I shared with you, I think you can think of families that are not necessarily have an incarcerated parent, that these match scenarios would apply to quite easily. We had a female match, a female mentor and a female mentee. And I learned a lot from doing support and supervision with other matches. And I spoke to her, and one of the things she shared with me was that her mentee was moving to the other side of town. But she wasn't ready to, which would be more challenging for her to keep the relationship going, but she wasn't going to end the relationship yet because the match had been through a similar scenario before, and the mentee and the family ended up not actually moving. So she didn't want to go through those steps or processes if the relationship had a chance of staying together. One of the things she shared with me about this particular family was that her mentee was often inconsistent about being there when it was time for their match meeting. So they would say, we're going to meet at 6 o'clock next Tuesday. And they would talk about that at the end of their match meeting, and they would say, okay, 6 o'clock next Tuesday. She'd have her mentee repeat that. She'd make sure that mom knew that. And she would call the day before. Sometimes the phone would work, sometimes it wouldn't. And she would call the day before and say, just want to remind you that I'm coming to do the match meeting at 6 o'clock on Tuesday. Okay, so this is a phone call she makes on Monday. And she would show up at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, and mom would say, oh, the mentee is at grandma's house, which is all the way over on the other side of town. And so what the female mentor started to do, because that would really bum her out. Here she had done all this extra work to set up that meeting, and here mom didn't remember, and neither did her mentee, that meeting was supposed to happen. And the first few times it stung a little bit, but what she told me she learned to do was she always had Plan B. She started to have Plan B in place for every time she was going to meet with her mentee. And Plan B would be some errands that she would run on that side of town where her mentee was, or it would be something that she wanted to go do or explore. And so that when she would have a missed meeting with her mentee because her mentee didn't remember, she was not feeling that against, she wasn't feeling sad about that anymore. She would say, okay, well, and she'd go do her other activity. Because I think as women, you can take it personal that the mentee doesn't care about you. A lot of the mentors, female mentors, start to personalize those situations. And I thought that was the neatest thing that she started doing for herself. It made her feel a lot better, a lot more positive about the relationship, and it made me understand that she understood the dynamics of that family. It was just what would happen. and it wasn't intentional. It's just they didn't remember, and they had tried other techniques before, and it just would happen. And I've shared that particular story with other female mentors, and I think that it's helped them keep the relationship going and understanding that it happens. The families are trying to juggle so many other basics in life that sometimes kind of keeping something simple like a match meeting slips through the cracks. And it's not that they don't care about the mentor, but it just kind of happens. So I thought that was a really neat thing for her to have, was the plan B. So pause. Katie, are there any other questions that have come in?
Nothing has come in yet.
Okay.
A call for if anyone has questions, you can type them in.
Okay, so one last thing, if your programs are actually targeting children who have incarcerated parents, I know oftentimes because of the conspiracy of silence or the forced silence issues, it can be a challenge to identify kids that fit this population. I worked with programs for a long time that definitely was a challenge or a need, is to identify those kids. And so I just wanted to give you a couple places for you to think about going or think about looking. School counselors are a great resource. Oftentimes if the kids are having some challenges in schools, the caregiver or the parent may have in confidence shared with the counselor or the social worker that that's the dynamic going on in the family. Grandparent groups. A lot of these kids are living with their grandparents. Go to places where grandparents might hang out. I've heard of people going to beauty salons and barber shops in some neighborhoods. I've heard of people going to grandparents raising grandkids. Those are definitely some avenues. And remember that our grandparents love to talk about, they love to know about their neighborhood. So they may not have that situation going on in their family specifically, but if you let them know that they can send anybody to you or to call you if they know someone else, they definitely will do that. They like to know what's happening, and they often will share that with you. They love to be helpful. Pediatricians' offices. Now, you might kind of chuckle and figure out how do you get around the HIPAA laws with this. I'm not asking you to ask pediatricians to refer. They can if you have a good relationship with a pediatrician. Maybe you have some mentors or someone on your board or advisory board that is a pediatrician, or you have somebody is, it's their husband or wife that's a pediatrician. You can leave materials in the waiting room as well. Parents who are doing well, moms who are doing well, or grandmas who are doing well with the children that they're raising, and there might be incarceration in that, they'll connect with other resources for those kids. And parents who care about their kids, and the dynamics are going well, sometimes you can find some of those families that are a little bit more stable if they're coming through having found you at a pediatrician's office, because they're at least keeping that going for them. And then the last one is network. Network with everybody you can think about. Tell them that you're serving this population, that you tell them about the challenges of identifying families that need the services that are in this population. Talk to everybody. Talk to people at church. Talk to judges. Talk to even if you might have some program parameters where you have to serve kids who are coming out of federal or state kids who have parents who are incarcerated at a certain level, maybe state or federal. It's okay still talk to the county people. The county people who are in the correction system, they know those federal and state people as well, and they can open doors for you or connect you with individuals that you need to get to. But all I can say is share the story, share your challenges, let them know that these kids are at risk, more at risk, that your organization is really committed to making sure that they have great opportunities, and you'll find them. And then the last thing is just for your mentors. It's so important that they know that they have your program support and supervision throughout the relationship. That's often critical to keeping the relationship going. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If there's not any other questions, Katie, can you just double check real quick?
Just a thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice day.